Hello? Oh, okay, we're on. We're ready to go. We'll begin the planning committee meeting at City Council. It's about 1:34. I'd like to entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the last meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Very good. In terms of the regular list of legislation, I will propose that we take time and move into the new list of legislation, of which we have plenty, and go ahead and start from there. Number two is number 2, ordinance amending the zoning map by changing the retail business use district classification, use on property located east side of South Arlington Street, south of Palmetto, and west of Modena Drive, also known as parcels 60, I won't go through that, to a commercial use district classification.
So recommend to refer for a public hearing on June 11th.
Okay, June 11th. Okay, all those in favor of referring this item signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. 3 is ordinance authorizing a conditional use to establish a retail and wholesale building material supply company at 1265 Triplet.
So recommend to refer and advertise for public hearing June 11th.
Okay, good. All those in favor of referring this item signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. 4 is authorizing conditional use to construct an apartment development at the corner of Mall and Crawford.
We recommend this be referred for a public hearing.
Very good, June. Okay, all those in favor of referring this item signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it. 5 is accepting a vacation plat for Ellsworth Court south of Kenmore Boulevard.
Yes, this would accept a vacation plat for the Ellsworth Court, which is an unused public alley. It just dead ends into the property owned by Signature Mold, and this would allow the property to be unified for future development.
It's a vacation plat. Is the ward council person in favor of this?
Yes, sir.
And does the owner, like one would say, I guess the petitioner, own both sides of this
That's correct.
alley area?
All surrounding, yes. All
Gotcha,
properties
gotcha.
surrounding.
Okay, good, good. And this is, and every department in the city has had an opportunity to review this,
Yes.
as is usual? Good. Is there any questions or comments from anyone? This item? Hearing none, is consent agenda okay?
Yes.
Cool. Is there a recommendation for consent? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Okay, consent agenda. 6. This is accepting a dedication plat for Cole Avenue Extension.
Yes, this would extend Cole Avenue, 60-foot right-of-way into the property to be subdivided for the future Firestone Business Park development. And it accepts the dedication plat of that roadway.
Very good. Is there any questions or comments? Very good. Is a consent agenda okay?
Yes.
All right. Is there a recommendation for consent agenda? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it with 1 abstention. Mr. Clerk, catch that?
Did you get the abstention? Did you get the abstention?
We had 1 abstention,
Okay.
sir.
I'm sorry. That's number 7?
That was number 6. Had 1 abstention.
Okay. All right.
You okay?
Got it.
Cool. 7, approving the sale of city-owned land located at 428 and 432 Krause.
We recommend to refer this at this time.
Okay, good. All those in favor of referring this particular, is there a motion to refer this item?
Motion to refer.
Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. 8, accepting various right-of-way documents for certain property described below to facilitate the completion of the SUM 261 Talmadge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. This be the purchase of 209 Talmadge Ave for the upcoming Talmadge-Dayton intersection project. It is a settlement.
Settlement, and you guys came to terms on this particular item.
Yes, sir.
Very good. And this is in support of the Talmadge Avenue improvements that's going to be done by the state of Ohio?
Correct.
Through the
We
city?
are eliminating one of the street lights up there.
Very good. And if everyone is familiar, this is near Dayton Street, and it's kind of a not quite aligned in terms of that intersection. So this will be helpful, I'm certain. Is there any questions or comments? Mr. Neal?
So the purchase price is $250,000,
Yes, sir.
and the way it sounds, this is to Myers Street and Blue Street?
Yes, they're realigning the intersection to remove one of the street lights. So now where there's two of them about 50 feet apart, there'll be one. This is an ODOT project. It's funded by ODOT. Yes, sir.
So it's not coming out of our money?
Right, it's non-city money.
And where's the international?
I don't know if they've...
I don't think they've decided on a location yet. I think, yeah, that's been what the discussion has been.
Okay. Is there further questions or comments? Is there, yes, Sims?
So in the interim, where are they located?
Oh, they will be there until they set up shop somewhere else. They're still finalizing their location.
And so we anticipate the project will begin,
Later this year, beginning of next year.
And the project may not start right at that location, so it's probably into 2019, I would guess, before that.
so they'll
will be
have until
effective.
2019 to find a new location, you think?
They'll
I
need
know
this
that this
year.
has been, this is, if I could, I had some conversation with them some time ago in reference to this, and I know it's been on their radar, if you will, for some time now, and this has been a negotiated price, from what I understand, what we've been told here, so I'm pretty sure that they're pretty confident that they're aware of this and probably aware of the time frame as well.
Yeah,
But no, you're in the right.
yeah, so I, at least I've had some conversations too, and I
Yeah.
thought that the city was working to help them find a new location. If we're in North Hill, I mean, there's something going on. I just kind of wanted to know what that window was.
Yeah, we have had discussions to that effect. I haven't been a part of those discussions, and as Councilman Fusco said, I'm sure they're making arrangements to have a temporary location if they don't, in fact, find a permanent one before this project would start.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments, Mr. Neal?
Because this has something to do with the road, are we looking at throwing new houses?
Thank you.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Because this has something to do with ODOT and the road and what's out there, that one piece of property in and of itself, I don't know how it's going to impact the overall, because you have Jennings, all that.
Yeah, no, it's actually, the street is going farther away from Jennings. Jennings will actually have a bigger front yard when it's done. It's shifting over away from there, so envision there'll be a grassy area in between there.
Jennings will have a bigger front yard?
Yeah, yes, because Dayton Street to the south of Talmadge Avenue is further west, and so the street, there'll be just one continuous Dayton Street intersection, and it's going to go through the site of where the International Institute is now, so Jennings would actually be able to expand its green space slightly to the west.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Any further questions or comments? Very good. Is there a recommendation?
If possible, we would recommend suspension of the rules so we can give them their funds quicker. So when they ultimately decide on where they're going to go, it'd be most helpful for them if they had the funds as soon as possible.
Very good. Further questions or comments? Is there a recommendation for suspension of the rules?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Thank you. Number 9 is approving the sale of a vacant city-owned land pursuant to the city's Lot for Low program in order to facilitate the productive reuse of the property and to reduce the cost to the city and the taxpayers and maintain vacant lots.
And so this would be approval of vacant land. This would be to construct a new single-family home.
Very good. Did the ward council person get an opportunity to review this before it came in?
Yes, sir. 2 weeks ago, we sent out a memo.
Good, thank you for doing that. Is there further questions or comments reference to this? Is consent agenda okay?
That'd be fine.
Is there a recommendation for consent?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes do have it. 10 is approving the sale of city-owned land, determining it's not need for the public use. This is on Grant Street.
Yeah, this would be one of our standard lot sales. It is for the brewery company. It is so they can expand and build a patio and parking area. We've been working with them for quite a while on this.
Very good. This is city-owned land. 10,000 square feet. This is at approximately 50 cents a square foot, correct? Yes. Yeah, very good, which is our typical sale price. Is there questions or comments from anyone? Is the consent agenda okay on this?
That'd be fine.
Is there a recommendation for consent?
So moved.
Second.
There's a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes. Aye. The ayes have it.
Thank you.
I thought I heard some ayes. 11, the Director of Department of Planning and Urban Development or his designee to enter into contracts with nonprofit neighborhood-based organizations for the provision of services including, among other things, neighborhood events, community gardens, beautification projects, after-school programs, and mentoring programs, authorizing the payment for. This is what we commonly refer to as the Neighborhood Partnership Program. This is located within our capital improvement budget typically, and I do know that we had, I believe it was last week, last Friday or Thursday, there was correspondence from planning in reference to the proposed recommendations for this, and Mr. Segedy is here to speak on it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're proud to bring these recommendations before you. This is the 21st year that this program has been in operation. As you know, I think most of you are familiar with the Neighborhood Partnership Program. It's in place to create grassroots, vibrant efforts to transform neighborhoods. This year, the city again is partnering with the Akron Community Foundation. Akron Community Foundation is contributing $85,000 toward the program. The city will be contributing an additional $120,000. The grants that are before you range from $500 to $7,500. We do require a dollar-for-dollar match from the neighborhood organization. This grant cycle, we received 66 applications for a total of about $337,000. There were 66 applicants that did come forward. As I mentioned, 51 were recommended for funding. And the sheet that you have that summarizes that the total award for the whole program is $203,000.
Okay, very good. This is similar to last year's budgeted amount?
Yes, very similar.
Okay, very good. Is there questions or comments from any, Mr. Swirsky?
Just how many groups are being served by this?
There were 51 that were recommended
51.
for funding, yes.
That's really impressive. Very good.
Yeah, touching
great.
every part of the city.
That's really good.
Very good. Questions or comments? Is there a recommendation,
Consent would be fine.
consent? That would give everyone an opportunity to review it, the consent agenda itself. So short of any concerns or questions, can I get a recommendation for consent agenda?
Recommendation for consent.
Is there a second? Is there a second? I'll second it. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Abstain.
Okay, we've got 2 abstentions. Just notice, though, we have, yeah, I don't know if she can. We may have to go to council as a whole this evening. Thank you. Excuse me 1 second. Okay, very good. We will, on this particular item, we will take temporary time on this item here, and we may go into council as a whole this evening, just to let everybody know, due to abstentions. So we'll work it out before our 7 o'clock meeting. Okay? So based on that, we will be taking temporary time.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The next item. What's that? Is, I believe, 12. Yes. The next item is item number 12. This is a substitute offered as an amendment, amending and or supplementing Title 15 land usages and enacting 154 vacant commercial or industrial buildings for the Code of Ordinances. This is the one that's commonly referred to as the VBR. Vacant Building Registration Program. This was introduced a couple weeks ago. We've had a lot of discussions. I want to thank everybody on council because we've gotten quite a bit of input from everyone. We've met with had some discussions with the realtors, the land bank. I sent this over to BOMA, the Building Owners Association, as well. So we've had some input on this particular item. And try to include everyone's input the best we can. Not asking for a vote tonight. Going to take at least a week or so to look this over to make sure we get this done right. There is some changes to this, and I'll try to go over the highlights of some of those. We have Mr. York is here, who's been part of this, and of course Mr. Valley and Ms. Landers have all been part of these discussions with council. Just to let everybody know, some of the changes, the major changes, and if there's anything I missed, please let me know. But in terms of notifications, we're going to add council members are going to be notified of all the meetings that occurs. The historic group,
The Historical Society.
Historical Society is going to be notified, as well as the community development corporations, from what I understand.
They're not added into the legislation. That
Okay.
would be up to the council person
That's
to
right.
notify whoever they want, or, these are highly public
Right.
records, it's going to,
Sure.
if they're keeping an eye on their community, we believe they should know about that.
Very good, very good, thank you. We're also going to add, in terms of the, excuse me, in terms of the organization itself, the 5-member committee that's going to be formed is known as an appeals board, just similar to what we have in housing and a number of other groups here in the city. We're going to add members from the Community Development Corporation, as well as the Board of Realtors. In terms of representation, that'll be appointed by the mayor and approved by city council. There's also, we're going to change, previously I believe it was 60 days or 30 days. 60. That we were going to ask for 60 days. Once a building becomes vacant, ask them to register. We're going to now move that to 180 days. The fee structure, we'd heard comments about the fee structure and trying to adjust that. We're now under 10,000 square feet, a rate of $300, and over 10,000 square feet, a rate of $500. So there's going to be a significant difference. And if I understand correctly, the majority of the buildings are smaller, or smallish. So that should take care of that piece. Also, if buildings are vacant that are strip plaza or multi-tenanted, they will not be required to register unless there's 40%. Is that
More than 60% vacancy of
more
units by
than
square footage.
61% vacant? So that's kind of like the lion's share of the adjustments that were made. I know that Mr. Swirsky had, and perhaps you can talk about that, a definition question about that, and I believe that was addressed as well. So, short of that, did I touch on everything, Mr. York?
Yes, for the most part. I mean,
Okay.
substantively, yes. There's a few,
I know some housekeeping
Clean-
that we
yes,
had to do.
housekeeping items.
Yeah, like change inspector to director and things along those lines. There was some housekeeping that was done. Again, not asking for any vote this evening, but input, of course, or any questions at this time on this particular proposal. Mr. Swirsky?
Yeah, I think, first I have to thank Committee Chair Fusco for holding those initial talks, and for the Law Department and others who responded to a lot of the recommendations that seem to be mostly incorporated into this new version. Really appreciate it. I think it's a great process where people get together and talk about things. And I think the results show that. I do have a few more questions at some of the changes, beginning with in the definition of public nuisance, which I'm very glad that we got a lot more concrete about that. But I'm wondering, because we do, as Cincinnati has done, we do specifically refer to dangerous and unsafe hazard. But then there's a comma, and it says, or general welfare of the occupants. General welfare of the occupants is kind of a broad statement that, and if we're interested in taking down buildings that are a danger to the public safety, I'm not sure, there might be a better way of wording that. I would just ask you to take a look at that. Maybe and general welfare, but not or. Because general welfare is kind of a very open term. So I don't know if anybody wants to respond to that, about why you put that in like that? Is it on purpose, or do you mind changing it, and general welfare?
I would just say first that this is a very typical sort of definition. These definitions generally tend to be broad. And again, the hearing process is where these things are really vetted out, and where the property owner has an opportunity to put their, case forward that the property, is not a nuisance. That's what the board is there to decide. So it's very typical to see these drafted with this sort of language. But again, that's what due process is for, to vet out what's truly, an issue and what's not. So
Okay, but-
again, I think
yeah.
what you're seeing here is more specific normally than other parts of our code are. So I think, again, it's going to be up to the board ultimately to make decisions about what truly presents a public nuisance to the surrounding community.
Right, but if the language is or general welfare, it sort of takes away from establishing that it has to be a public nuisance, dangerous and unsafe. It's kind of a contradiction.
Public nuisance doesn't just include being, a safety hazard. There are other nuisances extend beyond what is just maybe a fire hazard, or there are other kinds of uses that can create a nuisance. So you want to be able to account for those as well.
Right. Okay.
Okay, any, good, go ahead.
You changed the registration period to 6 months? Do you want to explain why?
I can do that. The reason and logic behind that is primarily like whenever a building does become vacant, typically within a couple months, it doesn't fall into disrepair. And so this is 6 months that gives them an opportunity to not only keep it in repair, but also to market the property as well. I think that's an adequate time frame.
I would just second exactly what Councilman Fusco said. Also, we're trying to capture chronically vacant properties, not properties that are in transition between uses. So we heard that feedback from council and from the community. We wanted to make sure that we had a time frame that really said, okay, this property is not just in transition, it's actually vacant now. So we thought 6 months was an appropriate time frame.
Okay. There's a referral to the appeals board. Someone with background in community development, just want to explain what's a background in community development, is there?
Well, I think it's intentionally broad.
Okay.
It's not, what we found in some of our other boards is if you get too specific, you could get into a period of time where it's difficult to find a candidate. Someone with a background in community development could mean many things. I mean, they could be on, perhaps they were on our planning commission for some time, or perhaps they do something for the university that helps the school grow, or, it could be very broad. But we heard comment from council and the public requesting, certain qualifications, and that was one, and I think it was purposely left broad.
Okay. It's great that you're notifying the Historical Society and the Clerk of Council. And why did you decide not to follow up on the suggestion of the Community Development Corporation being notified?
Well, because, Mr. Valley's staff is going to have quite a bit to do to notify just the building owner, lien holders, council members, the Historical Society. If there's some community groups out there that can or should be notified, we believe the council members can fully bring that to their attention.
Would it be
if
too
Mr.
much
Valley's going
to send an
figure
email?
out what the community development corporations are that should be notified, I mean, if he misses one, what are we going to do? Start the process over?
Mr. Valley, would it be, I mean, if an organization, I assume there's going to be emails going out as well as formal notifications. If an organization would be interested in being notified via email, would that be appropriate?
We would absolutely do that. The process will be similar to the Housing Appeals Board. You know how you guys get the monthly status of what's going to the Housing Appeals Board, and then that way if you know there's a particular problem house in the neighborhood, and say you've been working with some residents or a block watch, you can notify them, and we're thinking that same process would work here. If there's a building going to the vacant building appeals board, then council can reach out to them and say, hey, look, you've been complaining about this structure for years, now here's your opportunity, it's going to the board here, such and such date.
Good.
That's about it.
Okay, good.
Just these are great changes. Thanks for the good work.
Any other questions or comments from anyone? Okay, very good. Yes, Ms. Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the change relative to sizes of building, but I don't know if it was incorporated. We talked a little bit about the purpose or usage of the building previously, like if the building used hazardous materials. Is there some kind of rider that's on there? Because it seems like that would be a little more expensive to tear down as a result because of the extra things you would have to do.
So obviously the condition of each individual building is going to make a very big difference on what the ultimate cost would be to demolish. The fee that we're charging is never going to cover the cost of demoing an individual building, right? And it's really not intended to do that. It's intended to cover the cost of administering the program. We're hoping, obviously, some funds will be available for demolition. But obviously, some vacant building owners will be complying completely with requirements in their building will never be torn down. So to charge them extra just because the use of their building is, say, industrial as opposed to commercial wasn't something that we felt was justifiable. So does that make sense? No.
No.
So you want
what doesn't make sense.
You want to charge extra for properties that once had chemicals in them? Is that what you're saying?
It would depend, for me at least, it seems like there's going to be something extra that you're going to have to do.
Right, and maybe the clarification is ultimately the property owner is responsible for the cost of the demolition, always. So we may front the cost, but we're ultimately always going to go after an individual property owner for the cost of demolition of that structure. So that would be part of their cost. Whether or not they're collectible or whether or not we get that money is a different question, but ultimately you're responsible for the cost of demolition of if it's your property. So if you had hazardous materials and that cost us a lot, that's on the property owner.
That'll be it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Further questions or comments from anyone? Okay, good. Well, thank you. Again, we're going to take a week. If there's any questions or comments, please feel free to forward them to me or to Mr. York or Mr. Valley or the team here, and we'll go from there. So is there a recommendation to refer this item? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of referring signify by saying aye. 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 Nay, the ayes have it. I would like to ask the committee for their indulgence for just, say, 3 minutes. We do have an organization here who would like to speak to the committee for 3 minutes. This is called the Civic Green Group, Quad Lock. Mr. Kevin Davis is here, who is the project lead, and we'd like to provide, I know these folks have met with some of the council members. If Mr. Davis would like to come forward and give us like 3 minutes or so, we'd appreciate that. And thank you for coming.
Hit that little red button there. There you go.
There we go. Is that better? Good.
Thank you.
So once again, thank you for everyone's time. Good afternoon. The Quad Lock Civic Green Group, we're actually a collection of like-minded individuals that are looking to impact some of the social and housing development opportunities that exist here in the city of Akron. We see a tremendous opportunity to build affordable housing that will benefit the future residents of that housing, but we also look to impact the local workforce. We have an opportunity, if we're successful in some of the things that we're working on, to potentially build a factory here locally and impact local employment from that level. So really our goal through the individuals that we have a design plan that we've already started to work on, and a couple of the RFPs that are going to be submitted over the coming months, and we would certainly beg your indulgence and for the others that will make decisions on these to factor in not just the economic impact of that development that we're submitting, but also everything else that goes along with that. So we think there's a great opportunity. You have a beautiful city here. I think there's great opportunities, and we look forward to working with you and being part of your community.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Thanks for coming in this afternoon. Got to spend a couple minutes with you and your group here. If you'd like to, if they could all stand for a second there.
Sure. So we're a very kind of multidisciplinary group. So we've got everything in sort of the front left. We have Jason Durr, who's actually our local quad lock distributor, who's based here in the state of Ohio and has the ability to supply and support material. We have Candace Eberhardt, who's our local real estate expert. Based on the amount of people she said hello to in the building, I think everyone knows her here already, which is great. We have Margaret Hewitt, who's with the Green construction team here locally, and her focus is really looking at sustainability and making sure that we impact all of the things that are important to you all here. We have Jill Smith, who's the architect from Civic Consultants, who's actually worked on the development of the proposed plan that we're working on. We have Irvin Worthy, who's with Worthy Construction, so would be acting as our general contractor. We have Bradley Ferguson, who actually is with Break-In Concrete, and I didn't explain briefly at the beginning, but we have a unique construction methodology for the development we're working on that's actually based on an insulated concrete form. So think of a structural reinforced concrete building that's insulated and stays in place, that's highly efficient. We have Dwayne, and I'm drawing a blank on your second name, who's one of our investors in terms of helping us support and be able to fund this project. We have Ryan Derer, who's our Quad Lock regional manager for the region, who kind of brought this opportunity for us. And then, of course, we have Lamont Porter, who's sort of our key stakeholder here, who's driving many of the relationships with you all here. So I think it's a great opportunity. We have a very multidisciplinary team We think we bring a lot to the equation, and we'll be pleased to be working with you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis, so much. Are you going to be here for a while?
I will.
Good, good. Well, and I'd like to ask any council members if they get a few moments to meet with you and your team. That'd be great. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you
Good.
all for coming down this
Welcome.
afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll adjourn. Thanks.
You got so many things going on, whether it's bitching or catching. So she just wanted to build a country. How are you doing housing in town? We did. Because I helped her get set up for the room over here. I got this one. I can't vote. I cannot vote. I cannot influence a vote. I don't want to go to prison. You understand that? 2-10. Was he pissed off because he didn't get invited to the meeting?
Huh?
Was he pissed off?
Which made no sense to buy the building. You know, so far away from it. Not even. It was a good one.
All I know, you know it better than I do. Don't piss him off.
That's the shake.
So you got...
Come on, you know
this.
Good afternoon. We will begin our public service meeting here in Chambers. Okay. May I have a motion for the minutes from our past meeting? Okay, I think I had a so in a second, and so. I believe that those minutes have passed, so we will move on. On the old agenda, we have a piece that is on there. I'm going to ask for that to be filed because we have an amendment today that you will read in a little bit. We're not to it yet, so I'm just going to say on the old stuff, we'll file that piece. Okay, and we will now go into what's new on our agenda. What's new? What you know, I messed this up. The first piece that comes before public service, and we do have all members present, is an ordinance authorizing the purchasing agent or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts after publicly advertising for bids for street tree trimming services, approving the specifications therefore and declaring an emergency. Mr. Moore?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, this is our annual contract with our trimming company, which will be bid out, and they will trim, like, you know, the limbs away from the stop signs and a lot of the work throughout the city where we need trees trimmed.
Mr. Moore, do we, obviously we're going to publicly advertise for bids. Will we know when this is going to happen?
It's a little bit, it's maintenance work that happens throughout the city.
Okay.
It's not like big tree cutting programs or anything like that, so it's...
Because I know council members get numerous phone calls, but that isn't so much the city going out there and cutting.
That's Ohio Edison.
Yes,
yeah.
that's Ohio Edison. So with this particular one, we're probably not going to get the phone calls we would get with them.
No, you probably won't notice the work being done for the most part.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, are there any members of the committee that have questions or concerns?
Consent would be fine.
Okay. I have a motion for consent. Do I have a second? Second. That was your motion. Okay. This will be placed on the consent agenda. The next one to come before us, number 14, is an ordinance levying special assessments for the improvement of certain streets between certain termini, 2017 Phase 1 Arterial Collector Program by resurfacing such streets with asphalt, concrete 402 and 404, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Moore?
Madam Chair, this is for the work that was done last year, where we actually have the quantities now, so we can calculate exactly what the assessments should be based on the amount of material that we used, and this would be the assessments for this coming year.
Okay, all righty. Are there any questions or concerns from members of the committee? Seeing none, are there any questions from other council members? Seeing none, what is your pleasure?
Consent would be fine.
Okay. I have a motion for consent, and I have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this will be placed on the consent agenda. Number 15, ordinance levying special assessments for the improvement of certain streets between certain termini, 2017 Phase 1 Residential Resurfacing Program by resurfacing such streets with asphalt, concrete 402/404 and declaring an emergency. Kind of sounds like the one I just read.
Madam Chair, it's exactly the same, except this is residential streets.
Right. Okay, are there any questions or concerns from the committee? Okay. I had a motion and a second for consent. Before we take a vote on it, are there any members of council that had a question? Okay, seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, this item will be placed on the consent agenda. Number 16, ordinance levying special assessments for the improvement of certain streets between certain termini, 2017 Phase 1 Unimproved Street Resurfacing Program by treating the surface thereof with substances designed to preserve the surface and declaring an emergency. Mr. Moore.
Madam Chair, same explanation. This is for the unimproved streets.
All righty. Is there any questions from the committee? Any questions from members of council? Seeing and hearing none, is there a motion for consent, I'm going to imagine? I had a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this item will be placed on the consent agenda. Number 17, ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee, after publicly advertising for bids, to enter into a contract or contracts for the construction of certain projects on Evans Avenue from Home Avenue to 400 feet east of Shreve Road and declaring an emergency.
Madam Chair, this is my opportunity to tip my hat to the Engineering Bureau. We've been trying to get this fast lane grant for about a million years, well, say many years. Mr. Fusco probably remembers it from his time in the Service Department. We actually got the funding, $5.7 million. We've got an OPWC grant of 2.3, and then the remainder of the project's filled out with sewer capital and water capital. But this will allow us to build the bridge over top of the railroad tracks there on Evans Avenue, which if you've ever driven up there and you've gotten stopped by that train, it can be very annoying at times. So this will...
You read a novel.
Yes,
You read a
that is
novel.
correct, and it happens frequently. So the businesses up there, this is going to be a very nice improvement for those businesses.
Are there any questions from the committee? Any questions from council? Engineering, would you please stand up, because I think we owe you a round of applause. Patrick, you missed it.
Persistence.
It has nothing to do with it. Thank you, guys.
Persistence pays off.
Thank you. What is the time frame on this?
That's a great question.
When,
The summer, excuse me, summer of this year till summer next, 2020.
okay.
2 years.
So 2-year project, starting this summer. All righty. Okay, what is your pleasure?
Consent would be fine.
Consent? Motion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? This will be placed on the consent agenda. That's good news. That's a good one. Number 18, ordinance authorizing the mayor to file applications and enter into agreements with the Ohio EPA and Ohio Water Development Authority for a water pollution control loan to fund the construction of the Kelly Convenience CSO Rack 3 project and declaring an emergency.
Yes, this is part of our CSO program. This would allow us to obtain the loan funds to construct about 400 feet of an upsized sewer. This will help us not have to build another basin. This is part of the Kelly Rack 3 program, a piece of it.
Any questions from the committee? Any questions from council? Committee, please, Mr. Fusco. Councilman.
Building this versus that, is there cost savings?
Yes. I'm trying to think. There you are.
The cost difference between the storage basin and the green project is about $10 million.
That's a
savings.
pretty good savings, I would submit.
Yes.
And again, I think we should applaud this effort. This is, I assume, part of the integrated plan. Thank you. Thank you. And this is, thank goodness. Thank goodness. This is significant, and your efforts need to be applauded, because this is going to... Sure.
Let's applaud.
Let's applaud again.
Should be applauded. Thank you. That's 10 million. That's chump change there.
Yeah, so thank you for all you do.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
And
And I would submit that we suspend the rules with a favorable report on this.
Well, okay, we applaud and then we have a suspension. Are there any questions or concerns from anyone else?
Another difference to the basin would also be...
Mr. Swirsky, turn your microphone on, please. Basins often have odors, right, from the neighborhood, so this avoids that as well. Is that true?
We actually don't have any issues with odors with our storage basins, so we haven't had any complaints about odor.
But it is a much better solution to handling the CSO issue. It's much cheaper, and it provides less disruption to the surrounding area.
Well, we have a motion for suspension of the rules. Do I have a second? And I have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this will be placed on the agenda that way. Suspension of the rules. Number 19, Ordinance authorizing the mayor to file applications and enter into agreements with the Ohio EPA and Ohio Water Development Authority for a water pollution control loan to fund the construction of the Chittenden Green CSO RAC 3 project and declaring an emergency.
Madam Chair, this is another piece of the CSO RAC 3 program. Chris is passing out some drawings showing what it's going to look like, but this is a green solution. So that between the previous one was upsizing sewer, this is a green part of the program. So those together will eliminate the need for that basin.
So I don't think I heard that very last thing you said. Did you say this will be an elimination of that basin?
Yeah, we will not have to build the basin if we construct these different pieces and parts. There's actually three more of the green projects that will be coming before you in the future. But this is two pieces of that puzzle. The upsizing of the sewer, the previous ordinance, and then this ordinance.
Great. Ward 5. Okay. Councilwoman just told me Ward 5. Okay, well, I'm happy for you because this looks nice. Any questions or comments from the committee? Any questions, comments, or concerns from the other members of council? Seeing none, would you like to make a motion, Councilwoman in Ward 5? Okay, do you want that to be suspension of the rules? Okay. Do I have a second? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this will be suspension of rules on the agenda. Ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter into a contract or contracts after publicly advertising for bids to furnish engineered wood fiber surfacing at various locations in the city of Akron and declaring an emergency. Mr. Moore.
Madam Chair, this is our annual contract to provide for the mulching around the safe tot lots in the city, and consent would be fine.
And this is typical. This is something that comes before us every
Yes.
year. Okay. Any questions from the committee? Any questions or concerns from the members of council? Hearing and seeing none. I have a question. Councilman Fusco.
What type of mulch do you use? Do you use the wood or the rubber or the, do you guys know? I'm just curious.
I'm pretty sure it's just wood, but
Wood chips?
It is just wood, but this top lot mulch, it doesn't have the shards in it, the sharp edges.
Right.
For the kids that would fall in. So it's a special mulch that they use.
Gotcha.
It's not treated, there's no, pesticides, that type of thing in it.
Good. Thank you.
I believe it's mandated now underneath any playground equipment, and it's shredded actually a little bit finer and different than the other ones. Yeah, it's very expensive. Okay, consent? Is that
Consent agenda.
okay? Okay. Do I have a second on the consent? And I have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this will be placed on the consent agenda. Number 21, ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a sponsorship agreements with the Appalachia Ohio Alliance for the Utzinger Log Project and the Big Darby Creek Conservation Corridor Initiative with the Twin City Water and Sewer District for the Unrichville Lowhead Dam removal and with the Stark County Park District for the Nemesilla Creek Preserve Phase 2 and declaring an emergency. I just feel like I read the
Madam
Bible
Chair, you
with those
passed.
words I never hear all the time. Okay, go ahead. Mr. Moore?
from time to time, we come before you and sponsor projects outside of our corporate limits. The reason we do this is, number one, it doesn't cost the city any money at all. And number two, it actually provides us a break on our interest rates on our loans that we get on our CSO program, AWR program. This one is projected to save us somewhere around $500,000 in interest payments by sponsoring these projects.
Okay, are there any questions from the committee? Are there any questions or concerns from the other members of council? Now, if I have this calculated correctly, we had a $10 million savings on number 8, or on 21, and we have $500,000. So it's a pretty good day here.
We're doing pretty well.
So thank you. Thank you for all those people that are working behind the scenes that are making this possible. Is there a pleasure?
Consent would be fine.
Consent? I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this will be placed on the consent agenda. Ordinance 22, would you like to read that in, Mr. Clerk, or would you like me to?
Sure, I'd love to.
It's the amendment. I took the hard one. I took 21 with the Nimbusilla and the appellation.
This is a substitute offered as amendment. Item number 22, ordinance amending and/or supplementing Title 5, Public Works, Chapter 52, Garbage and Refuse, Section 52.14, Service Charge, and declaring an emergency.
Okay. Mr. Moore, I will turn it over to you to kind of update us on what changes were made.
Okay, Madam Chair, a couple weeks ago, we came before you and we presented an ordinance that would have eliminated the recycling credit, which is $2.50. We did listen to your comments and came back with this revised ordinance that would raise everyone's sanitation rate by $1, and then it would keep the, what is that, Metro Service, anyway, the Municipal Service Index escalator, which would be capped at 50 cents. So each year at the beginning of the year, based on whatever the Municipal Service Index was, the rate would be adjusted based on that, but could not exceed 50 cents.
Okay. Now, will people who recycle continue to receive?
They will continue to receive the $2.50 credit. Anyone that recycles, and any new customers would receive that benefit, any new recycling customers.
So just so we have this clear, because I had a number of residents who called me the next day after this was first read in and thought we were doing away with recycling. And we are not. So that's the first thing I think we should let everyone know. We are not doing away with recycling. However, as you just heard, there are going to be some things that will be changing with our billing now and the amount, and with our index of where we have capped it. We will still be recycling, however. And I have to tell you that after you presented that first piece to us, I had some very much reservations about it. As I did more research, I realized that we have overdone our recycling almost to the point that the best way I can, the way I took it in is, years ago when you drank water, you just turned on the spigot and you drank some water. Nowadays, we're carrying around our plastic water bottles, and how many do we go through a day? These are all being recycled, and the need is not as great as what we're producing right now. So what we have is warehouses full of recyclables that aren't being able to be used, and the cost just to warehouse our recyclables is going up. And many of the things that we, not many, some of the things that we recycle aren't worth the return that we get on recycling them. So as I did a little bit more research, I found that we're grateful that the city will continue to recycle because we want to be that minded. But maybe we have to also educate. I haven't brought that forward yet, which I will be doing at my next meeting. Then instead of always grabbing a bottle of water, maybe we need to use a reusable cup more, that maybe we need to take the cloth bags to the grocery store more. So, so having said that, I am going to thank you because I wrote to you. I had concerns, I should say, I spoke with you. And I want to thank you for adapting this in a way that we don't see this gap that we are feeling here at the city with how much we are paying for recyclables. Okay, with that, I will open it up to the committee for comments. Councilman Kamer.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I just want to applaud you too for taking the time, listening to us, and going back and seeing what formula we could come up with. And I want to thank you for keeping the recycling discount. I will support this piece moving forward, but I also just have one recommendation or request is whatever we can do, not just to educate our residents to recycle, but hopefully to put some boots on the ground, maybe a couple times a year, to see if we can go out and actually physically inspect these recycle carts and not just rely on the drivers. And I'll be part of that too if you need, me to be part of that.
You hit the nail on the head.
So I
agree with
appreciate
all
that.
3 of those points.
So I would love to see somehow 2 or 3 times a year, just to go out citywide or somehow, however we can do it to just inspect these carts so we just don't rely on the drivers. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Kamer. Anyone else from the committee? Any member of council? Hearing and seeing none, what? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Sims. Let's go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I've raised this question or concern before about the automatic increase annually forever. I just have problems with that. Today we just talked about millions of dollars we saved somehow, and we applauded ourselves, but we still haven't addressed issues relative to water bills. And if we have millions of dollars we saved, is there not any way we can use some of those savings to, instead of increasing garbage pickup, $1 may not seem like much to most folks, but we've had fee increase after fee increase and this and that, and we've been talking at least since I've been here, and I know it's happened before me, about the water bill, and we still haven't had anything done about that.
I'm sure you understand it's a $1.4 billion program. This is money, when we say savings, it's not really savings, it's money we don't have to borrow to build those projects. But that project is still probably 5 years at least till we're complete. And then we'll know the final tally on how much the whole program will cost. We're doing our best to bring those numbers down from the 1.4, but we still have a ways to go.
Yeah. I'm still challenged by it, and
Councilman Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank Mr. Moore and Mr. Luttle. I mean, I know they went to great lengths to share with all of us to make sure that we understand, and I understand if there's a shortfall, we have to increase our rates, but to Councilwoman Sims' point, and I've raised this question in these chambers many times, if someone comes in and they want to build a building, we make sure that they build it to specs so that it can sustain or actually handle the stress and whatnot that the building's going to have to withstand, if it's for an industrial building, a house, whatever. I use that example because we raise rates and we increase fees, not taking into consideration, just as the city's struggling to make its budget meet, the residents that we serve are struggling to make their budgets meet. And a simple question has been asked: if our median income for families is $35,000 for a family of 4, how much can we tax them before we tax them too much? Now this right here is just $1. But just this year, if they work, we increased a 0.25% tax increase. We did an aerial appraisal of everybody's property, so they got a tax increase there. Then if they get their roads repaired, we're assessing them for the same road that we taxed them for. Our water bill is a never-ending stress on folks. These are just realities that the city is struggling with, but the city is our residents. And so this is what I'm asking, and I'm particularly concerned because in trying to still come to understand the $9 million or 8-point-something million shortfall that we had, in the explanation that was shared with me, one way we were going to make that up was by tax revenue and by increasing our fees. Increasing our fees means that we're going to continue to tax our residents in one way or another. And we don't know what that breaking point is. I think it's our responsibility I mean, this right here, the city, we're trying to meet our budget, but it's our responsibility to understand, to get some understanding on how much we can tax our citizens. There was something in the paper about maybe 2 weeks ago, no more than 3 weeks ago, where it talked about the different taxes and how, when we talk about, and this is something that we use these terms a lot about equal and equity. The tax increases that we give, if you're a family and you have two people working, you're making what's, I guess, median or middle income now is somewhere around $75,000, a little over $60,000. That our tax increases may only be 4% of your, or somewhere around there. I can't remember the figures exactly. I can pull the report. But they said for those who are at that 35 or below, we're actually taxing them 11 to 12 to 15 or more. So I think it's just our responsibility. As we look at how we're going to balance the city's budget, we have to have an understanding on how this is impacting our citizens. I mean, we have our retirees coming down here and telling us how we've, thrown their budget out of whack because the city had to balance its budget. Now, these are the real struggles that we're dealing with, but I understand this one, but it's going to be harder for me personally to just pass fee increases saying that the city has to balance this budget when I truly understand the city is our citizens. And the ones that I'm hearing from, these incremental tax increases are impact them. Not in of itself a dollar, but when you add them all up, they're hurting our citizens. So I just hope that as we come into, we're coming into our capital budget, we're going to be looking at our other budget, that we try to find ways to balance our budget without increasing fees and taxing our citizens even more.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Councilman Fusco.
Thank you for your comments. I support the last part you said, and that is, if we're not going to pass fees, then we have to cut. We're going to probably have to make significant cuts. We have already cut in a significant way. Talk to John Valley and those that work at our community centers. We've cut them significantly. And there's only so many options that I think that we have here. It's either you increase on this side or you cut on that side. And we just did hear how well our engineering bureau is doing in terms of, as well as the service director's office and the mayor, in terms of, trying to lower those costs for the CSO project, which is, that's a tough, these are tough votes. These are very tough votes in terms of whenever you have to vote for an increase for families and people like that. And so these are, it's not easy, and I sympathize with you on that piece of it, but until we find ways to cut even further, we're going to have to look at these kind of options, and it's a tough vote. I understand that.
Councilwoman Mosley Sanders.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for you, Chris and John. When this rolls out under Part 2, where it talks about purpose of legislation, what will be done to make sure that residents who may be eligible for the homestead rate will know whether they fall within that eligibility? Are we going to do something, I don't know, is it going to go on the water bills? Are we going to put something in the paper, which everybody doesn't get the paper? What are we going to do to make sure those residents are aware that they may be eligible for that rate?
I think that's a good idea, that maybe we put something in the water bill circular to let people know that if you're eligible for that, this is what you could save on your monthly bill. We can certainly do that. It'll be up to the newspaper whether or not they want to print that type of information.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And Councilwoman Samples, at my next ward meeting, I called Summit County, and they're going to have someone come and speak about the Homestead Act, so that, and I'll be happy to share that person's name with you. because there's many times and many situations where they should know what to do, and there's normally a time frame in there that if they don't act within a certain time frame, so we want to get out as much education. I think it's great that you put it in the paper, but I think all of us as council people also need to know how we can help our seniors, you know, with navigating that Homestead Act.
And Madam Chair, we fully expect to go out and hold meetings in the wards, your ward meetings, and have Rob Harris or someone like Rob Harris come out and speak about our program, what's good for the recycling cart, what the homestead is, all those types of information that we need to get out. Like Mr. Kamer said, we need to get out and tell a lot more of our story.
Yeah, and he's coming to my next ward meeting also, because people are concerned. They want to recycle. And what Councilman Kamer said was good. Many of them unknowingly sometimes don't recycle correctly. And I think I'm really pretty good at it, but every time that Mr. Harris comes out, there'll be one thing he'll say, and I'll think, I don't do that, or I'm doing it wrong. Right. So I think that's almost a yearly thing that we could keep getting out. Did you have a question? Councilwoman Sims?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So from the initial thought about increasing to the $1, kind of get that. My challenge becomes when we have an assessment or a tax that goes on forever, so we never come back and have to justify need. And so if we were saying 5 years, perhaps some other resources opened up, and that we wouldn't have to continue around this, that'd be a whole nother story. But we're saying we're going to do this and we're going to increase. They're going to have some kind of increase every year through infinity. I don't understand that.
Okay. It's simply our costs go up by that municipal service index. So whatever that index is, that's what our costs go up every year. So what we're saying is we'll cap it at 50 cents, but every year our costs go up, whether or not, no matter what. It goes up by that index. So we're asking you to adjust our budget by that index.
So are we saying the trash pickup, which index are we referring to?
Municipal service index. It's a combination of all different municipal services.
So we're talking a combination of services, just not trash pickup.
Correct.
Councilman Neal?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just a question, but the fee increases for recycling, am I correct?
It's for trash service, sanitation. It's $1 on your sanitation bill.
Okay, straight across, okay.
And
so it doesn't matter if you recycle or not, okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. What is your pleasure on this particular piece?
I'll leave that council.
Okay. Committee, is there a motion from the committee on what you would like to see done with this piece at this moment? I have a motion of suspension of rules. Do I have a second? I'll second. I have a motion and a second for suspension of rules. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Is that in opposition then? Is that a no? Okay, so do you want to do a roll call?
Keith.
Aye.
Tamer. Aye. Fusco. Aye. Mosley Samples. Pardon me? Nay. Hoag. Okay. Passes 4-1.
So it will come to the floor tonight for council as a whole. So thank you. Alrighty, is there anything else to come before the Councilman Neal?
Madam Chair, just had a question on that side. I know we've talked about this, you know, you get these reports all the time of how people are using their trash in different ways. Some are using it to fuel and whatnot. Can we get a study sometimes on at sometime before the year is out on the different options and the cost impact for us with, because I know didn't we used to use trash for our steam plant?
We tried that, yes.
We tried. I know it didn't work out, but I mean, I see all this stuff. I see this stuff coming all the time where people are using plastic in their roads and trash to make sure. I think this is somewhat maybe what Councilwoman Sims was alluding to. to see if we're actually using the best option, so that if we can change it, turn it into a moneymaker, and take that burden off, one less burden off of our folks. Okay?
We absolutely need to stay on top of the latest way that we deal with our recyclable materials. Right now, the market is kind of in trouble, but we need to stay on top of it. I agree wholeheartedly.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Is there anything else to come before this committee? If not, we are adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're up next.
We're going to move right into public safety in 1 minute.
Supposed to adjourn.
Hey, we can make tires out of trash.
3:50.
Congratulations too, man.
Didn't work.
So we're missing a few.
All right, don't go nowhere, Maryland. We're going to do a public safety meeting. All right. We're going to go ahead and move forward with a public safety meeting, please. All members are present. We did hold a meeting 2 weeks ago that was chaired by Marilyn Keith, so can I get approval of those minutes, please?
So move. Whatever.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Who approved?
Aye.
Who approved? Okay.
So with that, we have one new piece in front of us, and I do believe we still have an old piece that is on time on the old agenda. So the new piece, ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter an agreement with Summit County for the boarding of City of Akron prisoners and declare an emergency. I see we have numerous people here, and I'll just introduce from the administration, James Hardy. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I will actually be deferring to City Prosecutor Gert Wilms to describe the piece of legislation, but before I do, I want to just say that everyone at this committee has worked incredibly hard on a new contract for with Summit County on the jailing of Akron prisoners. We feel very, very proud of where we ended up, both as partners to the county, but also in the pursuit of fair contracts that get us to a point where we're paying for what we're actually using, as well as making sure that our safety forces really truly have the beds that we are paying for. So with that, I will be quiet and I'll turn it over to Ms. Wilms.
All right, thank you.
Hi, Gertrude Wilms, Akron Chief City Prosecutor. We are actually here to renew a contract that expired after 25 years in February. We have had lengthy conversations throughout the length of that contract with the county, some compliments, some complaints, and through that process, we've ultimately been able to rework our contract for 100 jail beds. We originally had a few more jail beds than that, but when we actually made a data-driven decision, God forbid, we came to the conclusion we're really not using that many beds. We don't need to pay for that many beds, and we are going to see a cost savings. And I'll allow the finance director to speak to that aspect of it. Again, I would like to remind you, we are the only municipality in Summit County that actually has a relationship with the Summit County Jail. If somebody gets arrested on a misdemeanor charge in Barberton, Barberton has to make arrangements, bring people off the streets to actually house that prisoner. So this is a huge cost saver to us and really the only alternative available to us. The jail ultimately makes a decision whether a person can stay in the jail based on medical, mental health issues, and just straight up bed availability. Our previous contract had some identifiers that maybe we did not, both sides live up to, and we're looking to change all of that. We get a daily report from the jail that's available to not only law enforcement 3 times a day as to the available beds, but also to the judges, where the judges can ultimately make decisions on who should or should not be in the jail, what's the best use of their very limited resources too. And I would thank Judge Williams and Judge Oldham, who were ultimately part of these conversations and involved in the decisions that went into actually making this contract come together. So, like James said, it's been truly a group effort, and a lot went into this. The back end, again, looking to ultimately do cost saving as well. If we ultimately try and take people and there is no availability at the jail and we're given that information, we can ask for a credit. If we go over our 100 beds and there is ultimately that option, that we would have to pay for them as well. So it'll be a little give and take. The number that we ultimately reach could be higher, could be lower, depending on what actually is housed at the jail that year. I'm going to remind you all, we've been working with APD. We've initiated a felony summons program. Not only do we take that serious and consider who's appropriate for the jail at the felony level, but also at the misdemeanor, making sure that jail is actually a last resource, not where we start, but really truly a last resource for, again, very limited resources that we have.
Okay, thank you. The only other thing I would add, and then open it up to Deputy Mayor Brown or Director Miller-Dawson if they have any additional comments, is one of the biggest concerns that the judges brought up as part of our negotiations was a lack of a guarantee in the original contract for female beds. There was actually nothing in the original 25-year agreement that even spoke to the female prisoners. We now have that, and so in this new contract, we have a guarantee for female beds. We're working out the number still, but just the fact that we have come to an agreement that there will be safe and reliable space for female prisoners is a huge step forward, and one that I know the judges, both Judge Williams and Judge Oldham, worked very hard to bring to our attention, and we were able to achieve.
The only other thing I would add is this contract fixes the price that we're going to pay Summit County for our jail beds.
All right, thank you. We'll open up for questions. We'll start with committee members. I don't have any questions right now. Any committee members? Mrs. Sims, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the last 25 years we have been under the same contract. What was that amount annually? Do you know that amount annually?
It would depend. Anywhere from, I think the early years, it was a little higher. It was about $5 million. The later years, probably 3.5. Today, it's probably 4.5.
So this contract is really not to exceed 4.5 million.
It's not to exceed 4.25.
4.25, thank you.
But let me interrupt. It does have an escalator in it of 2.5%.
2.5% annually. Why did we choose 5 years? What's the rationale for 5 years?
I invite my colleagues to correct me, but I think we determined collectively, both sides, that another 25-year agreement was not the smart thing to do, given the economics of everyone's situation. Forcing us to come to the table every 5 years to either renew or to fix what might need fixing seemed like a reasonable period of time. I don't think that we
had a
yeah.
Just last question.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Councilwoman.
I noticed in the contract, based on a mental health assessment, that the jail could determine whether or not they'll accept an inmate. Have we looked at the work that is currently underway with the commission that David Hamilton is heading up, so that we are really in line with what the expectations are in terms of staffing and people's training?
My understanding, the task force is still in a fact-finding stage. They have not actually made any findings. So at this point, our contract has expired. We do need to actually put one back in place to be compliant. We did, I'll tell you, the law director did an incredible job of reviewing what is basically deemed as a medical reason for somebody to not be allowed, that it actually has to be the medical staff making that decision. It's just not the deputy. She was very satisfied with what she ultimately was able to investigate and work through, not only with Deb Matz, but also with the commander at the jail. And that's actually in the contract too, that it has to be a medical staff making that decision for a medical reason.
Is it a psychologist or just a medical nurse?
It's nurse, and actually we do have there is a staff doctor through Summit Psychological at the jail as well. It's not 24 hours, they've made that very clear, but at least available to run that by within a 24-hour period.
Yeah, because my understanding is that actually the commission is coming out with some, their report July 1. They're very close. I'd be interested to know, if in fact, the necessity is that your contractors run out, would we, if need be able to come back and look at that if we have to look at that, to make sure we're not excluding people just based on our present capacity to meet those needs?
And I got a two-step answer for you.
Okay.
Most of the people who are assisting the county on the task force are also at the table on this. So a lot of those issues have been addressed in real time. The second thing is we've agreed that these conversations need to continue to take place. So part of the Criminal Justice Advisory Board, we have a subcommittee for our jail capacity, and we meet monthly to address the jail issues and what we need in real time rather than waiting 5 years to readdress it.
Thank you. And I'm kind of glad there was, I want the number of beds needed for women at 12 to go down to 0. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilwoman. Any other questions, committee members? Mrs. Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank Gert Wilms, especially. I have the opportunity on a monthly basis to go to the jail capacity meetings, and they have really helped me understand the challenges. And what's really important is the dialogue that I hear in that room of someone saying this is, and maybe Barberton, and maybe whatever, but I get a better sense of why a 25-year contract would not suffice at this time, because things are changing. And I believe the amount of respect that is given to the people that need to be incarcerated and to meet their needs is so evident, because that's what's being talked about here. So I think any fact-finding mission will be great, just to add to the level of concern and respect that the people that are either assigning someone to go to our jail facility or are in some way have their finger on the pulse of what we're doing. I think it's all good, and I just want to thank you for the opportunity, because I did reach out to you and you allowed me to enter those into this. So I have a little bit better knowledge now, and I have a much deeper respect for the picture that is being painted here today because of the work that you've done. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions, committee members, other members of council? Linda Mobian.
When you talk about the assessment piece, I know it's nice to have a doctor and a nurse, but the real people that are doing the assessments are usually the licensed social workers and licensed counselors. So you want to make sure that you have those independent providers in the mix, because those are usually the ones on site, and they consult with the doctor. And there's probably a nurse on site as well.
Yeah.
But those are the individuals who really need to be included.
Absolutely, and that they do actually have that. Summit Psychological actually has office space at the jail. And I would encourage anybody who has an opportunity to take a tour of the jail. It's eye-opening.
Yeah. And I like the 5-year agreement, because it certainly gives you an opportunity to even think in terms of another provider coming on site if that provider is not providing the high-quality services that are needed. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions, comments, committee members, council members? Obviously, I think I would like the committee to consider suspension of the rules on this piece. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All right. We'll pass that and enjoy the sunshine today. Thanks.
I'd like to call Park and Recreation to order, please.
Whenever you're ready, sir.
Okay. I'd like to call Park and Recreation to order. And please make note that all members are present. I think we have, yes, we do. If I could get approval of our last meeting's minutes. All in favor? Okay, thank you. We have one piece before us. An ordinance authorizing the Director of the Department of Neighborhood Assistance to enter into a contract with the Catholic Charities Community Service Corporation for the operation of the Summer Recreation Program for Youth with Disabilities in order to support this successful and valuable program for the benefit of the disabled youth in our community and declaring an emergency. And we have Mr. Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Parks and Recreation Committee. The city has helped fund the Some Fun Day Camp for children with disabilities for well over 30 years. City of Akron has made it possible for these vulnerable campers to access high-quality summer programming. The program lasts 7 weeks. It focuses on providing youth with opportunities to practice skills that will help them maintain their skills and learning throughout the summer months. From 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. each day, the campers participate in activities allow them to practice fine motor activities. They participate in arts and crafts, cooking, fishing, swimming, horseback riding, rope challenges, and field games. The Some Fun program makes a notable improvement in the campers' ability to maintain or improve their independence, which is crucial to their eventual ability to enter the workforce. The funding is also used to provide nursing services, transportation, other activities, personal care, and supervision to youth with various developmental disabilities. Now, I did forward all of council this morning the letter from Catholic Charities to Mayor Horrigan, and also with the data from the 2017 participants. There were 46 total participants in 2017. 32 of them were from the city of Akron, and I included in the zip codes. So if there's any questions, I can gladly answer them for you.
Thank you, Mr. Valley. Are there any questions from members of committee? Ms. Samples.
John, do you know if any of these young people in the program, are they coming from UDS? Do Catholic Charities partner with them during the summer?
Yes. Yes, the Summit County Board of Development Disabilities coordinates the services for these children. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Sims? No, you're good? Okay. If there aren't any other questions from members of committee, any questions from members of council? If none, what's your pleasure, Mr. Valley?
Trying to think when the actual program starts. I believe it's rapidly approaching. If we could suspend the rules on that, that would be most helpful.
Okay, if I could get a motion for suspension of the rules with favorable report. Okay, it's been motioned second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, motion carries. I don't believe there's anything else to come before us, so motion to adjourn. Okay, thank you.
3:12. not even on here. I have a piece of legislation. You're next, yeah.
I'd like to call the Budget and Finance Committee meeting to order. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting? Moved and seconded, all in favor? Very good. We have nothing on the old agenda. We have one item. This is an ordinance authoring the mayor or his designee in partnership with the United Way of Summit County to apply for grant funding through the Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund to attain the 2018 Financial Empowerment City Implementation Grant and declaring emergency.
We do? Oh, I got one. Oh, you got this one? Okay.
Who'll be speaking?
Ms. Sample.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. Last fall, we came before you with the 2017 Cities for Financial Empowerment Planning Phase Grant, which we applied for and did receive. This is basically just kind of a continuation. This is the Cities for Financial Empowerment 2018 Implementation Grant. So these funds will allow us to basically open the Financial Empowerment Center and basically manage the costs for the first 2 years. I have with us Adrian Bradley from the United Way of Summit County, Director for Financial Empowerment, that can help answer any questions you might have.
Questions or comments from the committee? I know we're looking forward to, I think it's a June 21st ribbon cutting, I believe. Okay, good. Hope we'll receive that email. Ms. Mobian?
And this is the one in Kenmore?
Correct.
Yes.
You're planning for another one?
Right now, we don't have anything definite, but potentially sometime next year.
Oh, next year, okay. I'm looking at the funding. It's $150,000 in year one, and year two, another $200,000. Now, is this grant money for the most part, or this is coming from?
So United Way is actually matching what Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund is giving. So they are giving us $150,000 for a $150,000 match, and then they're going to be giving us $100,000 for us putting in $200,000. So it's a 2-to-1 match. Will be the second round.
Are we putting money in as a city, or we're just assisting with grant?
We are looking at that right now. Our finance director might be able to help answer some of those questions, because with the Financial Empowerment Center, the point was basically to implement financial empowerment as a city function. So eventually we will be looking to budget some of the funds for the Financial Empowerment Center within the city budget. But again, the grant, the way it works for 2019 would be a 1-to-1 match. Cities for Financial Empowerment will be giving $150,000. We have to match $150,000, which United Way of Summit County has already secured that funding for us.
Okay.
In year two, it's a 1-to-2 match. Again, Cities for Financial Empowerment will be giving us $100,000. We then have to match $200,000, of which we're already talking to a lot of our corporate sponsors, as well as banking, local banking facilities to help us with those dollars, those matching dollars.
Okay. So do you know of any funds that we need to secure?
As of right now, we're not sure what our match will be.
Okay.
If any.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and that's something we're continually looking at. Like Mayor said, he does want to make this essentially a city service. He considers this a public right, so that's something that we're looking into. Obviously, there's a lot of public support, so we'll take it as far as we can with grants and everything, but we're starting to look at different allocations that we could do, or if it's CDBG or something else, just long-term to sustain it. But for right now, obviously, United Way is a huge partner, and we have plenty of community support to keep the momentum going.
Does, in other cities, do they require a match? Does the fund always require a match from a local partner?
They do.
Okay, very good. Good, that's exciting. Any other questions or comments? Do we have a motion for suspension of the rules? And Motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All right. Now, we'll pass that out this evening. Thank you very much for all your work. And, you know, we had a discussion earlier today about folks that are struggling with the context was water bills and whatnot. And so, you know, we come along with something like this, and sometimes financially it's those little foxes that destroy the vine, and I know that's what you're setting out to do to assist men, women, families. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have another piece. This is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with Summit County and the cities of Cuyahoga Falls, Fairlawn, Greene, and Stowe for the acquisition, installation, and operation of a consolidated computer-aided dispatch system and declaring an emergency. No, it's not on your iPad. This is...
It is.
Is it? Reload. Oh, okay, I did not reload. Reload, and it will be.
Hi, thank you. It's Captain Brian Harding, Akron Police. I'm also the Safety Communication 911 Center Coordinator. You should on your iPads, I hope, also have a brief PowerPoint that I'd like to quickly go over with you, just hit the highlights of quickly. We've put a lot of due diligence. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You'll take my head off.
Let's see if I got it.
So we have Mark Pettit, the CIO for the city and county. Jason Roblin is a consultant with MCM Consulting, which I came before you in the past for to assist us with this project. And Chief Twig from Akron Fire and Deputy Mayor Brown are here as well, in case we have any questions. So over the last 18 months, we've been looking at a new computer-aided dispatch system. I'm sorry, Ms. Miller-Dawson, I apologize for that. I'm sorry about that. Sorry. We've been looking at a new computer-aided dispatch system. If you switch to your next slide, it'll briefly describe what a computer-aided dispatch system is. This is how we receive our incoming calls in the communication center. And when we say a CAD or computer-aided dispatch system, this program that we're purchasing is not only that, it's also a complete record management system for police and fire. This is the backbone of our entire operation of what we do. Currently, if you go to the next slide, you'll see that our current system is about 23 years old. Normal anticipated life on a system like this is roughly about 8 to 10 years. Our current system requires a significant amount of maintenance to keep current and doesn't offer a lot of the new technology that's available today. If you move to the next slide, it should show our current CAD system and what a dispatcher's view looks like. Does everybody see that? Are we there? Okay. That's what we're looking at today. And if you go to your next slide, you'll see what we're going to see when we go live with the new system. You can see the difference is stark.
Looks like something from DOS 3.3.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Pretty similar. And like I said, you'll see the next slide. And then additionally, we have talked about some benefits on the next slide. And some of those just highlights real quick. Decreased response time, immediate access to critical information for our first responders, or police, fire in the field. Also, multiple agency sharing. So this CAD system is going to be shared amongst other entities, so we can get information from other jurisdictions as well and have immediate access to that when we respond, whether it's a warrant or maybe medical alerts as well when we respond. Also, turn-by-turn navigation. If you go to your next slide, you'll see on there what the new CAD field unit navigation could look like. There's some apps available. The top part shows like an iPad, and the second is some mobile functionality. Those are just multiple screens that you could pull up from an app on a cell phone, so maybe Commander wanted that as well. If you go to your next slide, you'll see just some real-time mapping and available information that we can get right away. So now currently, once a month or as needed, we have analysts do a lot of this work. This is much quicker now. We can use real-time information. And then your next slide, again, will show some additional kind of dashboards for commanders to look at and see where we're currently trending, make better decisions quicker. Again, one more, if you go to your next slide, is just another report that we can run. These are some auto-generated reports that we could populate And then if you go to your next slide, there's another example of that as well. And then one more slide, we can talk briefly about the company we use. So like I said, this has been going on for about 18 months. We have literally probably thousands of hours between demos and looking at different vendors and software for police, fire, the Safety Communications Center as well involved in this project. If you have any other questions as well to share here. We chose Tyler as a tier 1 support system. There's over 50 agencies in the state alone that use Tyler. They're very cutting edge on what they're doing, Tyler New World system that we have now. And then, because at this point, I open it up to maybe any questions or.
Is this, so we purchase the package, or is there an annual?
It is. So we purchase initially the software. It'll take about 18 months for us to implement the program before we go live. And then yearly, there'll be a yearly maintenance fee for the software, also for storage and for some staffing, some IT support as well.
Does your current will your current hardware support this?
Our mobile devices in the field will support this. Our current backbone software is not, and that's included in the pricing as well, and new servers and infrastructure.
Okay, great. We've been talking about this for a long time.
It's a very exciting day for us. We're excited.
Ms. Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 2 questions. The first one being, how many different programs did we look at besides this particular one, would you say?
I'm trying to think back about, yeah, probably roughly about a half dozen that were looked at, and then we kind of narrowed in on this one, and then did a lot more due diligence.
According to our needs, I imagine, because this is personalized according to our fire and our police, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. All right,
yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Mobian.
I guess I love it when I see that we're saving $700,000, but I also know that all this new technology is really extremely beneficial. Let me ask you this. I know that technology is changing as fast as we wake up. What do you do as this ages? Do we get upgraded material with a discount, or what?
Yes, part of our license agreement is updates as well. So maybe at the last slide, there's some more information on there as well that talks about, we have a site license, so we have all their products within that realm, different modules that they offer, and if they come out with a new update, we have constant updates as well, as long as we're current in our maintenance agreement.
Do we have to do anything with hardware to keep up with these updates, or it's just basically the software that's...
I'll let Mark answer that one probably.
Hi, Mark Pettit, CEO for the City of Akron. We have specified within this agreement to put hardware in place to support this. Typically, that hardware is replaced on a 6 to 7 year basis. We build into our financial models to accommodate hardware upgrades over the period of this agreement. There are other options. You've heard about the cloud and hosting as a service that we're looking at currently to help offset any future peaks and valleys in the financials over the years.
And if we had a major disaster, you know, not that we ever want to go through 911 again, all of these communities can talk to each other and
so the CAD system will be shared. We'll have an individual view, but we will be able to share, we'll be able to log in at other locations as well.
I mean, there will be no communication problems.
Are we talking like, this was not radio communications, you're talking access to the network?
But this would give you a lot of information about what's going on if you have a major problem. Yes. I see all these burglary, robberies, domestic violence, and all this kind of, if you had a major problem, this could communicate that? Or am I misreading something?
Having all the communities sharing the same software package will make it much more easy for us to share resources and major events, automatic aid, mutual aid agreements that we have with our partners surrounding us. We'll be able to share that information literally electronically versus today where we have to pick up the phone and call Cuyahoga Falls and say, look, we have this going on. They're going to have it in their computer system instantaneously at the same time we do.
Thank you, that's what I
You're
was
welcome.
trying to say.
I got you.
I appreciate you.
Honestly, it really is one of the biggest benefits of the system that we're looking forward
No,
to.
it looks fantastic, and thank you very much. It just looks like it provides a lot of good information. And it also looks like you can probably generate all kinds of reports that you wouldn't have to do manually or on a separate system or something. So, no, it looks great. And plus you're saving money, so thank you.
Okay, do you have a motion for suspension of the rules? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh. No, go ahead.
Just a couple of questions. Our cost for this is the 3.1 million or overall cost? Because in the paper, it gets the overall cost.
So that's our cost projecting there. There's some initial upfront costs, and that also factors in a few years of maintenance as well.
A portion of it will be paid with the new tax. A portion of it will be paid by the wireless funds that we currently receive.
Because the paper made it seem like the overall cost for the system was around 3.2, unless I misread it. Are we paying for the whole thing?
No, we're only paying Akron's share.
And Akron's share is?
Is the 3.1.
3.1. I think that's what Mr. Neal was asking.
It showed there was some grant, some of the other things were getting grants on it, but it didn't look like the overall cost for the program, was about 3.2.
It's just Akron.
And this is where we control by the counties,
The county will run the system, and we will have, but we'll have control of our local information as well.
This is probably a question for bigger picture, and my question is this. We talked about.
Mr. Neal, would you talk into the microphone, please?
Sorry.
Thank you.
I should have caught that, thanks. We talk about becoming a smart city and what that looks like, but we've never gotten a comprehensive plan on what that is. I mean, you know, and my question is, are these pieces that went into agreement with, how do they work towards us becoming and having synergy, being a smart city? I mean, are we buying something that if we were to look at a complete system, some of this would already be a part of that package? Or are we buying bits and pieces that, when we look at the big picture, it's really not going to create the synergy that we need to be able to leverage some of the other investments that we're making?
I know Mr. Neal and I have talked before about that text to 911. Remember a long time ago we talked about that? So this has the capability of doing that as well. So, and before we move forward, I'm going to let you guys know, the committee know that the members from Tyler are back in the back as well. If they have any questions, I'm going to let those folks know that we were thinking about them, that they're back there. So go ahead, Mark.
Sir, I'm involved in some of the smart city initiatives, and one of the largest components, there's a lot of sensors and databases and information that can be collected, but one of the largest components is making decisions based on data.
Correct.
This system will have a very complex database and will allow us to make some very, very clear and concise decisions that will save money and save lives. And Smart City can be a lot of different things, and there can be a lot of fragmented initiatives. We do have some efforts on making sure that the new systems that we put in place work together where they need to work together and are thought strategically and put in place properly.
I guess for my benefit, and I think for the benefit of the council, if we could get an update on what our strategic plan is to move towards being able to maximize that. I mean, I've seen this one city was sort of like highlighted by, I think it was Google. Google was there. Mm-hmm. They were adopted by Google, and everything from what their street lights did. I mean, Mr. Luttle, we've talked about this to some degree. I mean, it all worked together, and so it leveraged. I mean, street lights helped with everything from traffic control to letting the police know what's going on in the area. And my question is, this system right here, in the big picture, when you look at all that other technology, does it fit with that, or is it something, an independent piece in and of itself?
It fits within the strategy that we're putting together in the Smart City thing, yes, for sure.
Is that something that we can be apprised of I mean, we're getting ready to move into we've got to put in our capital budget request on June 19th. Not saying you'd have it ready by then, but just so that we can understand as we're looking at buying street lights and doing other kind of improvements, seeing how those purchases are going to move us towards our ultimate goal.
I'll come up with an overview that outlines some of the programs we're doing and how we can get to that ultimate goal, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes. All right, looking for a motion for suspension of the rules.
I'd like to move for suspension of rules.
Is there a second?
Excuse me.
Oh, okay.
Question. So on the 3.2 million dollars, is that the total cost? I'm just trying to hear you.
That's Akron's total cost.
Akron's cost. So do you know the total cost of the program? Normally would have made, for me, even when we're not paying portions of it, there's a listing of all so you get an overall picture of that. So that wasn't
I
here.
don't have that slide with me. I don't know if one of the guys have it.
Yeah, Jason Roblin, MCM Consulting. It would be an Exhibit C of the intergovernmental agreement, and the number 3.1, I don't think appears on that intergovernmental agreement Exhibit C. It's taking the column of reconciliation. So at the end of 2 years, when the system goes live, everybody that's taking part in it will reconcile their books, because the amount isn't going to be exactly 3.1. It's going to be a little less, a little more. It's going to be most likely less, because there are a lot of things built into the system that we're not going to need, things that through the process we determine are maybe not in the best interest. So things like data conversion, we put into the budget, but if somebody says, oh gee, I don't necessarily need that like I thought I did, we're not going to be billed for that. So this number 3.1 doesn't correlate to that exactly, because we're taking ongoing costs from other columns as well. I know that doesn't necessarily answer the question. Akron's share is 54%. Am I correct in that number?
Yes.
54% of the total. So the number that we used with Tyler is...
So you don't have to go too far. So
Sure.
Does the 3.1 represent 54%?
It represents 54% of that 2-year amount until reconciliation, and I believe it also includes the first year of maintenance costs beyond that.
Right, it's 2020.
Yeah, it takes us actually through 2020.
Okay, so
It is 54%.
Okay.
Yes.
Just a quick question, I don't know. Since this is just the first 2 years, kind of like to give a startup, is there like a fee that all the rest of the STOW pay into to help share costs for maintenance? How does that work?
Absolutely.
How does that work?
Akron shares 54% of the ongoing cost. Then STOW's percentage is, they're paying their proportional shares.
So the fee structure for maintenance is set up the same way?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Anyone else have any comments or questions?
Just one, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just a question. Will we continue to maybe try and get other communities added? And I'm assuming if we do, that too can lower the cost of Akron, if we can just mention that?
Yes. The short answer is yes. The University of Akron, I owe them a quote, but until all of the parties actually have the legislation passed, I can't give them a firm quote. So they're already asking. Akron Children's Hospital is opening a dispatch center of their own for their private police force. They've inquired about it. Of course, the more the merrier to share the burden. And there are already, I believe, 6 other entities named within the investment summary from Tyler where there would be no additional cost to Tyler. It would be directly reducing the share of all of what I call phase 1 participants. So Akron and the other communities that are taking part, I'm calling phase 1, and we are planning for more phase 2.
So last question, I promise, I think. So as you enhance the level of data and stuff that you are able to realize as a result of this new system, one of the things we've talked about in recent months, even had someone come here to do a presentation, was ShotSpotter, because the issues of gun violence is a challenge for us. Is there a portion of your data collection that will allow you to do something around that or be adaptive to do some of that data collection for us? I think the cost for ShotSpotter was like $165,000 as a startup.
If it's data, if it's an internet protocol, it can be interfaced to the SCAD system.
It can be
So gentlemen, correct me if I'm wrong in the back, but you'll be glad to take their money for another interface. So $10,000, $20,000, whatever it might be, to interface a new technology. One that they almost threw in for free was Pulse Point, where you have the location of automatic defibrillators located. You have apps on people's phones. If they're CPR certified, they can get location information that somebody around the corner might be having cardiac arrest, and they can go help. I mean, these are the kinds of things that, I'm not familiar with the Smart City Initiative, but these are the kinds of things that you leverage the technologies together to make life better for your residents.
Do we now have that in Akron? So is that a part of the interface on the current?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
There's several like that, and
So this will be a part of that too?
it can be.
Okay, thank you.
All right. No further questions or comments? Looking for a motion?
Motion for suspension of rules.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All right, we will pass that out this evening then. Thank you very, very much. Look forward to seeing this.